Safta Shvois, Daf Tes, Amar Aleph. We're starting from 10 lines from the top. We learned in the Mishnah on the Shigas Tumas Mikdash Vekadash. Somebody who was Tamei when he entered the Beis Hamikdash. Somebody was Tamei and he ate kachim sheba yedi loy betchilu v'loy b'aseiv, who didn't have awareness at the beginning or at the end. Siddur Regalim and Siddur Hashchadash mechapim. The Siddur Regalim and Siddur Hashchadash are mechapim that Aveda. Do Rabbi Yehuda. Those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda Mashmo, my time of Rabbi Yehuda. Where does Rabbi Yehuda learn out that the Sir Hamusafim are mechapim on Aveda, that there was no Yedi at the beginning or the end? And for the Gemara Bakra, it says when the the Musar Reish Chedesh, it says Usir Isim Ech lechatos laHashem, and the word laHashem is not found by other Sidim Hamasofim. Like you find, it says here chatos echad, it never says laHashem. So laHashem is extra to tell you Chet she'ein makabei el Hashem. It's referring to a sin that only Hashem knows, meaning that there was no Yedi b'tchila u'besof. This is where the Sarish Chedesh is going to forgive. Like what about Mebayalei? But we find that laHashem is used for a different dasha. Like Reish Lakish. Like Reish Lakish, not Reish Lakish. Reish Lakish said, "Man is trying to say Reish Chedesh, shedem by LaHashem." Why is it by the Reish Chedesh different than Siriyah HaMesapim, which it says the word LaHashem? Says Gemara, Amakadosh Baruch Hu, it comes to tell us this Dash Hashem said that that this Sir should be a forgiveness for me. For this that I diminished the Yereich was at the beginning of the creation. The Yereich and the sun, the moon and the sun were the same size, and the moon came before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he said, "Is it possible for two malachim to serve under one crown?" So David told him to diminish himself, and the Yereich was upset. He came with a taina to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because I came with a right taina, so that's why I deserve to be diminished. And Hashem tried to calm him down, and David said to bring a kapara for himself for this that I diminished the Yereich. So that's what Hashem is used for, not to teach us maybe for the Aveda that it forgives for Aveda where there was no Yedi b'tchilu v'sof. In fact, the Gemara in Cain, meaning the Gemara is answering in Cain, if that's all it was coming to teach us, let the Torah say Al Hashem, because of Hashem. That's why the command is brought. My La Hashem. Why does it say with a lamed? So you want to look at that more, obviously to teach us like the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda, that the Sir Reish Chedesh is mechap on Aveda that's not Yedua. Only to Hashem it's known, and there was no the Yedi b'tchilu himself. That's what the Sir Reish Chedesh comes to forgive. In fact, you also say that the Sir Reish Chedesh, that's the whole dasha is only coming to teach us that it's to the dasha of Rabbi Yehuda, that it's to forgive on a sin that there was no Yedi b'tchilu. So as you want him Cain a name Kra Chatz Hashem. If that was the whole dasha, say Chatz Hashem without a lamed, which means a chatus that comes for a sin that only Hashem recognizes it. My La Hashem, what do you have to say with a lamed? Shabbat with no tarte. When this we learn out both drushes. It's the fact you want to lechapen nami afilu b'shavet. Let it forgive. The Sir Reish Chedesh forgive on any aveda where there was no Yedi u'besof. Why does the dafka go on an aveda on Tumas Mikdash or Kadash where he didn't know he was Tamei and he entered the Beis Hamikdash, he didn't know he was Tamei and he ate kachim? After the Gemara Tana by Rabbi Yishmael. This we learn out from the Bryson from the Beis Hamikdash Rabbi Yishmael. It says, "Hoy was since the Sor Achitzoin of Yom HaKippurim Bab Zman Kavua comes in a designated time. Then Reish Chedesh Bab Zman Kavua. So too the Reish Chedesh comes in a designated time. Mazeh, so we make a comparison. Just like the Sarachitzin just like the Sarachitzin only forgives for only a specific case where he's Tamei and he entered the Beis Hamikdash where he's Tamei and he ate kachim. So too the Reish Chedesh will forgive only on a sin that has to do with Tumah, not knowing he was Tamei and entering the Beis Hamikdash, not knowing he was Tamei and eating kachim. Says Gemara Ashkechan, we find a makel for the kapara Siriyah Hashchadashim. For Siriyah Hashchadashim forgives on that sin. Siriyah Regalim, how do we know the Siriyah Regalim can forgive on such a severe sin of Mikdash V'Kadashim while being Tamei, where we know the sin, the punishment is kares? If you want to say, okay, Siriyah Regalim, we can learn out the Tanna by Rabbi Yishmael, the same binyan of. The Siriyah Regalim is brought out at a designated time. Says Gemara Dikla Mifach, we can slug up that binyan av. Made the Reish Chedesh, if you want to learn out from Reish Chedesh, which is also on a designated time, I thought Reish Chedesh is different, she came to other. Because it's brought constantly every Reish Chedesh. So it's brought much more than the Sir Haragolim, and therefore its Koyach of Kapara is stronger, that it could even forgive a Mikdash Gadasha where there's a sin of Kares. We made the Yom Kippurim. If you want to learn out from Yom Kippurim because they're both in the designated time, I'll tell you no, Yom Kippurim, that it forgives so many Averes. So since its Kapara is so strong, it forgives so many Averes, so therefore I'll say Dafka there. But not by Sarah Golem. I mean, if you want to say Hagamrinan, where we learned early on the din of Kapara of Sarah Ish Chedesh Midi Yom Kippurim from the Sarah of Yom Kippurim. So how do you learn out Sarah Ish Chedesh from Yom Kippurim? Over there, we didn't ask the question, how's Kapara? We didn't ask Malo Yom Kippurim that the Yom Kippurim is much stronger because it forgives much more sins. Says Gemara, how's Kapara Michtachsive? By the Sarah Ish Chedesh, it says, but finish in the Pasik. It's a kapara we learn out from Chatas La Hashem, which it forgives on a sin which where there's no yediyah whatsoever. So, and the mashmos hapshuta means on all sins, and this that we used to learn out from Sarah Yom Kippurim, weren't coming to learn more. It was coming to be megala that it's less. It's only on the sin of Mikdash Ukadasha. Gilu Yemil Zviyamu. It's only a Gila de Sar of the Sar Shchedesh that is Mechapa, that it's only Mechapa on Tumas Mikdash Gadashov was learned out from the Sar of Yom Kippurim to diminish, not to say it goes on all Avedas where only Hashem is Makir. It came to make it smaller, only to limit it, only to Aveda where there's no Yediyah, only on Aveda where there was no Yediyah by Mikdash Gadashov. By Siri Golim, where it only says lechaper, and it doesn't specify in the pasuk on what it's forgiving. So if you can learn out from Sir Yom Kippurim that even these Seim will forgive on Tumas Mikdash Ukadashov, that which has Alvin Kares, I would say that's too much. You come to learn out more from Sir Yom Kippurim. I'll say no, you can't learn out more from Sir Yom Kippurim because Yom Kippurim has a stronger strength that it forgives them many Avedas. So if you want to only the marker of the din of Rabbi Yudin's Kedam and Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, where he said in a get to another Inyan, the pasuk says that Seir Chatzechad over there, and it says Usir with a vav, Usir. So the vav is to add on the first Inyan to connect and compare the Sira, it's Sira Chatois of each one of the regalim to the Sar, meaning the Sar Reish Chedesh, which is the Sar Rishain, which it says first in the Pasha B'Safim. Hachanami, so too here we learn out the din of Rabbi Yehuda from that extra vav that the pasuk added to the word Sar. It says Useir. So the Gemara says, just like the Vav Usiir, the Eis Vav that we learned elsewhere, that it comes to add on the first Inyan to be Mechaba Makish Seiri Chatois of one of the Moedim to the previous one, meaning to the Seir Reish Chedesh, which is the first Seir which says in Pasha Musafim. So too, this Usiir comes to add. Achanami, also here we can learn out the din of Rabbi Yehuda from the drasha of a letter above, which they added Usiir. It says here, and then it says Usiir. Iskish is Siri Regolim, Siri Rosh Chadashim. That the vav is coming to add to be makish Siri Regolim to the Siri Rosh Chadashim. Ma Siri Rosh Chadashim ain't mechap me'ela al only on Tumas of Mikdash V'Kadash Shein B'Yediyah Lo B'Tchil Lo B'Asav. It only comes to forgive on the sin of Mikdash V'Kadash where there wasn't a Yediyah at the beginning or at the end. On a case of Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash Shein B'Yediyah Lo B'Tchil Lo B'Asav, where there was no Yediyah at the beginning nor at the end. The Gemara doesn't stop. The Bnei Yeshua has to shout here. Omar Rabbi Yehuda, when Rabbi Yehuda said that they see him of Rosh Chadashim and Regalim, forgive al Shein by Yediyah Levi Chidduv Levi Save on Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash where there wasn't a Yediyah at the beginning or at the end. Hani Mili, were these words said? Bechet Shein Sefer Levada, only by sin that would never become revealed. For instance, that the person never knew that he became Tomei, not him nor any other person knew that will reveal to him later. But a sin that will become known to him, for instance, others had seen him become Tomei, and they would notify him that he entered the Beis HaMikdash while he was Tomei. Is it similar as if there's a Yediyah at the end? And I'll say that this Soyer, which is Nas V'chutz together with Yom Kippur, forgives for him, because the Sidra Gilman Sidra Shechadashim will not forgive only on a chet that only Hashem will know, or Dilma, or perhaps Afilu Chet Shetzek Livada. Maybe it even forgives the Sidra Golim and Shechadashim forgives even on a sin that eventually he'll become aware of. But being that Hashta Miyam, being that now Al Kaponim Chet Shein Makaboy, it's a sin that the sinner doesn't know. The only one that knows is El Hashem. Karina Beit, that we consider it as not having an awareness. Toshma. So the Gemara comes and answers this suffix. The time we learned in the Braisa on the case of Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash of Shein Bo Yediyah Lo B'Tchila Levasav, where there was no Yediyah at the beginning or at the end, and he will never become revealed. It would never become revealed to him at the end. V'Chet Shein, that there was no Yediyah B'Tchila V'Sefer Sefer Leva, then will become revealed. Siriyah Regalim Siriyah Shechadash Mechaprim. The Siriyah Regalim Siriyah Shechadash do forgive. Rabbi Yehuda, those are the words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Shimon says Siriyah Regalim Mechaprim. Siriyah Regalim do forgive unto Mikdash V'Kadash that there was no Yediyah at all. Avaloi Siriyah Shechadashim. Rabbi Shimon said, we learned early on that the Siriyah Shechadashim does not forgive on the sin of Mikdash V'Kadash. Of what does it forgive? So we learned on the previous blot on a person who was tired that ate kachim which were tamei. Rabbi Elazar said in the name of Rabbi Shai, my time Rabbi Shimon. Does Rabbi Shimon know that the Sarish Chedesh is in Chapon, a person who was tired that ate kachim tmeim, and it's not referring to Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash of Amakra, because it says in the pasuk, we know there were 3 sedim that was sacrificed on the Shminim Abin Loyim in the day that the Mishkan was put up, which was Eish Chedesh Nisan. Second year, one from when the Bnei Yisrael left Eretz Mitzrayim. One was the Sir of the Nasi, the Sir Chates that Nachman Aminadav, who was the Nasi of Shevet Yehuda, brought. Another Sir was the Sir Chates Shel Tzibur, that was designated for specifically that day. And the last one was Sir HaMesafim of Eish Chedesh Nisan. On this third Chatos, the Torah talks about that the Sir Chates Meisha inquired, and it was all burned. So he was angry on Elazar Yisama, who are the Bnei Yarim, the leftover after another Rabbi. He says, why didn't you eat the Chatas? This was given to as a forgiveness for the sin of the Eidah. Says the Gemara, this was given to the Sir HaMesafim, was given to forgive on the sin of the Eidah, the Haikra. This passage is referring to the Sarish Chedesh. See over there, when it was referring to where Moshe told off Elazar on the Chatas why they burnt it completely and didn't eat it. And he said to them, this was given for forgiveness on the sin of the Eidah through this that the Kohen would eat it. The Yolov, and Rabbi Shimon learned the Gzeiras Shava between Avin, it says Avin and Avin. Through the Gzeiras Shava of Avin and Avin, it says Avin by the Sir of Eish Chedesh, and it says Avin by Mitzitz, from the kapara of the Tzitz Hazov, that the Kohen got the war on his forehead. Never come by the Sir of Eish Chedesh, it says Avin, like it says Lassi says Avin, like we just said. And by the Tzitz it also says that it forgives on Avin, it says just like by the Tzitz, it forgives on the Tumas Haguf. Meaning on the Kohen Tomei that was Makriv. I'm sorry. Just like by the Tzitzit, it's not forgiving on the sin of the Kohen being Tomei. That means the Kohen Tomei who was Makriv. Only on Tumas Basa. Meaning on the Dam or the Chelav or the Basa that was brought up on the Mizbeach while it was Tomei, so the Tzitz makes it kosher. That it should be acceptable by Hashem. Afkan, the oven that the Sirach Chatas of Rish Chedesh is not an oven of Tumas Haguf, it's Tumas Mikdash V'Kadashov. Meaning that he came in while being Tamei into Beis HaMikdash or eating kachim. Tumas Basa is that the person who is tired, that was able on the Isa of eating kachim Tmeim. So he himself was tired. So maybe we'll say, so that's how we're going to learn out the Gzeira Shava. Because here we're talking about Adam tired that ate kachim Tmeim. And that's what the Sir Chatas is coming to forgive. So as the Gemara, why shouldn't we compare it completely, the kapara of Sir Chedesh to the kaparas of Tzitz? And learn out what Gzeira Shava Malahalan, just like over there, the Tzitz is not machapa on a sin, rather it qualifies the Tamei carbon that was brought up on the Mizbeach, only our Eilin, it's machshir the Kabbanis Tmeim that were brought on the Mizbeach, Afkan, the Sir Chedesh should only forgive on a sin of something that was brought on the Mizbeach, Eilin, just like the Tzitz. How do you know that it forgives even on a sin of achilas kachim tmeim? Having the Gemara of Adam Torah eating kachim tmeim. Having the Gemara having ha'edah sin, because it says the lashon having ha'edah, which the edah means on the avoin, on the sin of people. Edah is referring to the people, not to be machshir the kabbanis atmeim. So from the Gzeira Shava we learned out that this chet of the Sar is machaper on a sin of Tumas Basar, meaning a Adam Torah that eating Tumas Basar, just like the Tzitz is machshir on the Mizbeach, the Tumas Basar that was brought on it. In fact, you might have the sins and the Tzitz are learned from one another through Gzeira Shava. So why don't we say that the kapara of both of them are equal? The Chap, the Rish Chedesh, every day, let the Sir Rish Chedesh forgive on the chet of eating kachim tmeim, of a Torah eating kachim tmeim, and also the tzitz, and also on the case that it should be machshir, the kabbanis tmeim that were put on the mizbeach, that it should be machshir. And what's the nafkamina? What's the te'elis in this? Because nafkamina lahicha in a case where the nishva tzitz, where the tzitz broke, so there the sorry of Reish Chedesh will take its place and make that the kachim, the kachim tmeim that were brought on the mizbeach should be kosher. I mean, you want to have a kra because by the Siddur Chedesh it says lasis says avoin is v'lashin yachid avin echad u'neiseh can only forgive on one sin, the sin of Adam Torah eating kachim tmeim. Ve'ein neiseh shnei avonos, but it cannot forgive for a second sin, meaning on tmeim that were placed on his mizbeach. Frag the Gemara, nechape atzitz atidei v'ad Reish Chedesh. On Reish Chedesh, that means that you forgive on achlis kachim tmeim. Also, let the tzitz forgive for kachim tmeim, meaning for somebody eating kachim that's tamei, Adam Torah that is eating kachim tmeim. So Gemara, and what will be the nafkamina? If between one Reish Chedesh and another Reish Chedesh, he sinned by Adam Torah eating kachim tmeim, so that chet should be forgiven through the tzitz, and save him from the einish of misvadei shemayim. It says b'negeya to the tzitz in that pasuk. V'oisa noisa lachem es havein ha'ida. From the word v'oisa we learn out dafka oisa. I'm sorry. B'negeya to the pasuk of Sir Reish Chedesh, it says v'oisa The oisa is we learn out dafka oisa. Only the chatzor Reish Chodesh is noisa avein. It forgives for the achilas kachim tmeim. The ein acher like tzitz noisa avein could forgive on the sin of eating kachim tmeim, of a Torah eating kachim tmeim. So Ravashi learns the limit of the tzitz and the Reish Chodesh for the kapara that was designated for them differently. He learns like this. By the Reish Chodesh it says Las Avoina Eida. The word Ha Eida is extra. So he dashes like this. Dafka the Avoin Eida is this is forgives only on the Avoin of the Eida Chet of Adam Torah eating kachim tmeim. Veloy kachim. But not to be machshir a carbon that was tummy that was placed on the mizbech. Hasan by tzitz, ksiv v'nas havein hakadoshim. It says also over there. It says a hey by the tzitz hakadoshim, which is extra to tell you dafka the kadoshim. Does the tzitz forgive? But not the sin of the Eidah, not the sin of a person who is Torah eating kachim tmeim. In fact, we find a market to the words of Rabbi Shimon, when again to Siri Rashi Chadashim, the Mechapre, ala Torah Shachal Satame, on a Torah that had eaten Tame. But this that Rabbi Shimon said in the beginning of his words, Siri Regalim, the Mechapre, to his Mikdash Regalashem by Yediyah, Levi Chil Levi Asal. No, from where does he learn it out? He cannot learn it out. Rabbi Shimon dashens the Hekesh, the Lesida Rosh Chadashim. Rabbi Shimon doesn't use the words who's here to teach us by Seir Rosh Chodesh, because Seir Rosh Chodesh he holds can only forgive on a Adam Torah that ate Kachim Tamei. Says you want to the Rabbi Chama, Rabbi Chanina, Seir Usir. The Eisvav comes to add in addition to the first inyan. To the one before him. Hakanami, so too we use the vav Seir Usir. The extra Usir to teach us that the Iski Siddur Aragom and Siddur Ashchadash, Masir Reish Chodesh, the Milsa the Kodesh Mechapri, just like the Seir of Reish Chodesh is by Achilas Kachim on our Adam Torah that ate Kachim Tmayim, Asir Aragom and Milsa the Kodesh Mechapri. So too, Siddur Aragom is forgiving on our Adam Torah that ate Kachim Tmayim. The Chitem, if you're going to say the Chaper out there, let it be only Mechaper on the sin that the Siddur Reish Chodesh forgives, meaning only on a Torah that ate Kachim Tmeim. Haminam, we said before earlier on from the pasuk by Siddur Reish Chodesh, it says Va'oisa, which mashma Oisa, Dafka the Chatz Reish Chodesh Noisa Avein, forgives on the sin of the Eda, meaning eating Kachim Tmeim. Ve'nacha Nosa Avein. And no other thing could forgive on this sin. And if you're going to say it should be mechaper on that sin that the Sorah Chitzin of Yom Kippurim is mechaper, that means Tumas Mikdash V'Yadash where there was no Yedid B'Tchilu B'Sav, no Yedid B'Tchilu, but there was a Yedid B'Sav. He says that's not impossible. How many now? We said later on, but again, the Sorah Pnim Shal Yom Kippurim Achas Bashana, that kapara zu. But we learn out from here this kapara of Sorah Pnimi Loitei Ela Achas Bashana, that there's no other carbon except for the Sorah Pnimi that's mechap on this. And since the Sorah Chitzin of Yom Kippurim is compared to the Sorah Pnimi, so too the kapara of the Sorah Chitzin is only Achas Bashana, and the Siddur Aragom is not mechapa only on its sin. So far we couldn't bring a proof for eating for a case where there was no Yedid B'Sav, that there was no Yedid at the beginning, no Yedid B'Sav. So says the Gemara, we still have to figure out from where we learn out that it's mechap on a sin of Mikdash V'Kedashim where there was no Yedid or B'Sav. So we can compare it to Reish Chodesh Nesir Regalim, because it says Oisa. We can't compare it to Yom Kippurim, that it forgives on the Kabbanis that Yom Kippur is Mechapa, because it says Achas Mashana. And Seder Regalim is more. So on what does it forgive? On what does the Seder Regalim come to forgive? On a case where there's Yedid B'tchila and Basav, Hai Ba Karbenhu. That we already learned before, that it brings a Karben by the way Yedid. And if it's forgiving the Seder Regalim on a case where there was Yedid on the beginning and no Yedid Basav, I saw it Nas Mifnim, Yom Akurim Taylor. That we said already, they saw Nas Mifnim, and the Etzim Day of Yom Kippur forgives for that. And if it's talking about where there was no Yedid B'tchila, but there was Yedid Basaf, I saw Nas Machutz Yom Akurim Mechaper. We already learned the sword that which is Nas Machutz, together with Yom Kippur forgives on that. We have to say that the Siyam Misaf Regalim Ein Mechaper Ella on Tumas Mikdash V'Kadash Ein B'Yediyah Loi B'Tchila V'Loi Basaf. Only what is the Siyam Regalim coming to forgive on somebody who was tummy and entered the Mikdash or eaten kachim without having a Yediyah B'Tchila or Basaf. That's the marker for Rab Shimon Benegay to Seder Regalim, that it forgives for that sin.